22nd, 2020 Board of County Commission meeting. We'll hereby call the meeting to order. Please silence all your cell phones, any other electronic devices you may have, so to be courteous to the audience as well as those who have dialed in. We are conducting this meeting in a hybrid fashion, both live and call-in via Zoom technology. The Board of County Commission meeting for September 22nd is being held both in person and virtually, utilizing communications media technology made permissible pursuant to the Governor's executive orders. This meeting may be viewed in person in the BCC chambers, on SGTV, on YouTube, and by registering to participate in the Zoom webinar. Residents can provide public comment in person or by registering to speak on the Seminole County website and Board of County Commission's webpage. There you will find a link to register for the webinar entitled Meeting, Webinar Registration, and Helpful Hints. If you're unable to join via computer or online, interested parties should call 407-665-0808. That's 407-665-0808. For additional information on how to participate via telephone, we will take public comment on each item as it appears on the agenda. In order to be recognized to speak, if you're using a computer or iPad, you will need to use the raise hand feature, or if calling in by telephone, you will need to press *9. If you attend the meeting in person, you'll be required to wear a mask and social distance at all times. With that said, we would like to welcome Father Blewett from St. Stephen's Catholic Church for calling in today to give us the invocation. Clint, can you make sure Father Blewett's able to get in?
Yes, sir, he's in. He just needs to unmute.
Welcome, Father. If you would be so kind to lead us in the invocation, sir.
Yes, indeed. I'm happy to do that. Heavenly Father, we ask your special blessings this day on our commissioners and their staff and all who lead our county. We pray especially for our medical personnel and all frontline workers, those who are serving us during this pandemic. We pray for the sick and the hurting, the jobless, the homeless, but we also pray for our teachers, parents, staff, and students. So ask, Lord, would you bless these good people, keep them safe and well, keep them under your care, keep them always healthy, and keep us guided by your Spirit so that their decisions will be in the best interest of our communities and our county. And we ask this through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen. Commissioner Constantine.
Thank you.
Kind enough to lead us in the pledge.
To honor America, we say, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner Constantine and Father Blewett. Next, we will move to Mr. Alan Harris, who is here to give us an update from the emergency management side of the county. Good morning, Mr. Harris.
Good morning, sir. All right, good morning, Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager, County Attorney, and members of the audience. I'm going to talk about Emergency Operations Center activities, not just COVID. There is now another activity that we are doing at this time, and that is due to the tropical system that moved through the Atlantic Ocean. It's making a U-turn in the south part of the state and maybe moving into this area later in the week. Due to that, we are in action stage along the St. Johns River. We are at action stage at Lake Harney. What action stage means is that we start monitoring the parks, the boat ramps, make sure they're safe. The Florida Wildlife Commission, as well as Seminole County Sheriff's Office, uses their special operations boats to travel the waterway to make sure it's safe from any debris, any pilings that may go underwater, things like that. Also, there are no wake zones that are posted based on the water level. We're not at that level yet, but we are getting close to that level. Once that level is met, then we will start putting out no wake zone signs at each of the boat ramps, as well as on the waterway. So this is Lake Harney. Lake Harney did reach action stage on Sunday. Continues to be forecasted to remain in that light for a while. What's important about this is that it's not necessarily due to the amount of rainfall here in Seminole County. Our top rain gauge reached 4 inches of water, so it's not an incredible amount of water. What happened was that the mouth of the St. Johns River did not allow the river to outflow into the Atlantic Ocean like it normally would. Backs up into all the way down to Astor. Astor is actually experiencing some floodwaters right now, of course, affecting Lake and Volusia County. And then we get the remnants of that because our water cannot move north, just like the Nile River, St. Johns River flows north, and it can't flow up that way, so that's why we're experiencing what we're experiencing. In Sanford, we are forecasted to hit action stage on Wednesday, Thursday. We've already communicated with the Florida Wildlife Commission on a neighborhood that is in your district to make sure that no wake zone signs are put out immediately. I know that's something that we always want to look at, specifically at that neighborhood. So we've already had that communication with the FWCs. And looking at the boat ramps, Wayside Park is one of those that is normally used as they move down that direction. So we're working on that right now. Kudos to Leisure Services. Leisure Services did go out to all the parks, and we have done some mitigation. I say Seminole County, thanks to you, and thanks to a grant through the state, we have done some mitigation projects. So you can see the difference in the two mitigation projects. The first is Mullet Lake Park. Normally, Mullet Lake Park would be closed at this point. It would be underwater. It would be very unsafe to launch boats there. But because of the mitigation project that we did, that boat ramp remains open. People can still, the commercial fishermen can continue to leave there. The tours along the St. Johns River can continue to leave there. So that operation is continuing. Wayside Park, now remember Wayside Park is of course in Sanford, and it hasn't even reached action stage yet. 2 of the docks are underwater, 1 is about to go underwater. This mitigation project, and Rick can provide more information if y'all have questions later on, but this mitigation project is due for this next budget year through state funds and through our allocation. And then this will be improved, and hopefully it'll be just like Mullet Lake. Even at action stage, people will still be able to launch their boat and enjoy Florida's natural choice along the St. Johns River. Any questions on flooding before I? Okay. Going into COVID, these are, of course, the benchmarks and statistics that we look at regularly. Most of the benchmarks are improving. The PPE levels are better. We are getting PPE in regularly. There are some challenges now that guests are allowed to come into assisted living facilities and nursing homes. And that's not a challenge. It's wonderful that they can now come into those facilities. But because of that, there's a greater need for some PPE in those facilities. And those facilities are experiencing some delay in getting some supply to their facility. And we've been able to fulfill those needs. Our hospital status has continued to go down, and today I'm very happy to say that when I left the EOC, we have 26 individuals that are in hospitals with COVID. That's the lowest number that we've seen since the spike began back after Memorial Day. So in a few months, we haven't seen that number in a long time, and very happy to see that trend of a downward slope. Our positivity rate, though, continues to fluctuate. We don't know if that's because of Labor Day, if that's because school started back. Now we have the bars opening again. So that's something that we're going to have to look at pretty closely. HHS, Health and Human Services, uses positivity rates to determine the community transmission level of, this is one metric, community transmission level of a county. So we are right at that threshold of 5% where it would be considered substantial community transmission. So we're hoping to maintain lower than 5%. Our new cases were decreasing on a regular basis, and unfortunately over the last 7 days, we've seen a bump up. Now, have had a couple days where the numbers were in the 20s, but a lot of days where there were over 50. So we're continuing to monitor that as well. Hopefully that isn't a trend and a movement up. Hopefully we will be able to maintain that amount or decrease. Hopefully decrease. Our current cases also was continually steadily going down, and over the last few days has started to level off and actually increase. We don't know if that's because of school starting, college students coming back. We have noticed on our heat map that there is a hotter zone over the south part of Oviedo area, which just happens to be near the school. So that is a possibility. When you look around the state of Florida, some counties are starting to receive a bump. Even my alma mater, Gainesville, Alachua County, is starting to see quite a bump as school starts back, college students. And you look at our age range at what we're seeing, it is pretty consistent with that. So we're monitoring that very closely. Our current fatality count, unfortunately, I have to report, we had 17 additional fatalities reported to us since the last time I met with you, and we are now at 200 fatalities in Seminole County. Community dashboard, of course, continues to be available to our public. They can go online at any time and see any of the statistics that I provided to you today, any of the graphs. All of those are provided online. The age range of the individuals, you can see the age range of the individuals is, unfortunately, high school to college age range is where we're seeing a majority of our individuals at that time, and at this time. And in some cases, and I don't want to say it's good, but those individuals recover faster, and that may be why we're not seeing the fatality count, is because these younger individuals that are getting it are recovering. We haven't had any major fatalities under 36, so they are recovering, and that's a good thing. The challenge, of course, is to make sure that that doesn't start to move into the older range. Once it moves into the older range, then we could have additional problems, and we don't want that to take place. I did want to talk about 3 items that have come up over the last 2 weeks that have been questionable type of issues. One was CDC guidance on asymptomatic patients. They put out guidance that you don't need testing, and then they immediately rescinded that, and they say, yes, absolutely you do. I think CDC is having some issues because the second thing I'm going to talk to you about is also related to CDC, but we are encouraging individuals to test even if they aren't symptomatic, so we can identify the asymptomatic individuals so that they do not spread COVID around our community. The second was on Friday. CDC had put out some guidance that the virus was now airborne, which means that it would remain in the air for long periods of time. They immediately removed that guidance. That was actually a draft. The study was not complete, and they removed that guidance. It is still respiratory droplets. It is still primary when you're 6 feet and within 6 feet of the individual, and CDC still says that facial coverings and masks are very important when it comes to the respiratory droplet type of transmission. The last piece of information was not an error by CDC. It was a report that was put out by the CDC, and then a tweet that went along with it from, I don't even know what the source was, and then it just exponentially got worse. And this is the 6%, and you'll probably heard about this 6%. The 6% of individuals with COVID die just from COVID, okay? That means they have no other issue whatsoever, okay? For the other 94%, this is something we always knew anyways. We knew if people have medical issues, they are more prone to suffer the effects of COVID. Persons with asthma, heart conditions, diabetes, emphysema, those types of things. And if you think, and all of us think about it, we know someone. We have a loved one, we have a friend that has one of the conditions I just mentioned. Just because they die of COVID, their life matters. Their life should be counted. We don't discount their life. People live a long time with diabetes. People live I have a heart condition. I hope that I live a long time. But if I die because of COVID, my life counts. And my life should be counted when it comes to COVID, because that's how I passed away. And that's all that the CDC report said. And with that, I'll end my report.
Thank you, Mr. Harris. Any question from the commission? Mr. Lockhart?
Yeah, Alan, thank you again. I'd like to ask a follow-up from our last meeting. Want to make sure we get this on the record a little sooner in the video, because I know you and
Sure.
I have both been sending out video links to anyone
Yes.
who had questions about the benchmark number. And so I asked a specific question at our last meeting of Dr. Husty, because I heard him use the number 50 about being the magic number that we're looking for new cases in a week. Could you go ahead and reiterate what that number reflected and what we're looking at, so that folks who have a question about that, we can clearly answer it up front?
Yeah, can you go back to the benchmarks?
And I promise this was not a setup. He did not know I was asking him this question.
Well, clearly, because I don't have this PowerPoint ready, so. But I'm going to go to the things that we look at. About slide 5, maybe 6. All right, there, go back. Go back one. All right, these are the things that we look at. So it's not just one number. I would love to say that. You know, COVID is different than, this is going to sound very weird, but I would almost rather deal with Ebola than COVID. We know how Ebola transmits. We know how Ebola works. We know how to deal with Ebola. There are certain things, certain medications that we can give to help the individual. This is a very unusual virus. We don't know much about this virus. Clearly, CDC put out guidance and they removed it, and put out guidance and they removed it. We're all learning, and it's very frustrating. Super frustrating for me to read a study, read another study, and then another thing comes out, no, we learned this new thing. Remember, at the very beginning, they said facial masks and coverings won't do anything. Now, the CDC, the U.S. Surgeon General, Florida Surgeon General, it's on their website, Florida Surgeon General says this, the Florida Department of Health, the senior epidemiologist, all 3 of our hospital systems, all 4 chief medical officers, you heard them last, said that this is maybe the primary thing to prevent the spread of the virus. But let's go back to this. So, can we get PPE effectively? Can we protect our healthcare system? This is a critical infrastructure. It's very important. What are our hospital statuses? And as you heard from our last meeting, our hospital statuses are still all in yellow. Very concerned. Now, 2 of them did go to green, so that was a good thing. If we get 1 more in green, that may satisfy that benchmark. Okay. Our positivity rate, we want to remain under 5% according to HHS. For that particular metric. Our community transmission level, we don't want to be at substantial community transmission. Right now we are, so we want that to be lower. Our new cases per day need to be under 50. Anything more than that, we can immediately have a spike.
Per week? Is it per week
Well,
or
right
per
now,
day?
we're not even per day.
Well, I know, but I just want a clarification, because I
Per week
think,
would be wonderful. I
Okay.
mean, when we first, right before Memorial Day, we were there. This is also a good point. Well, and then the total current cases. The total current cases, we need that to be low enough where we can, of course, manage the virus. And anything over 400 or 500, where it's almost to the point where it's no longer manageable. We can't really track the patients. We can't really isolate and quarantine effectively, things like that.
so if I were to push a little bit harder on that and say that I'd like to see a column next to each of these metrics that we're looking at, and say, okay, PPE levels need to be, and maybe there isn't a fixed number, but there would be a range. Hospital status, we need all in green. positivity rate we want below, I think if I'm divining out of what you're saying, maybe below 5%. Community transmission level, there's probably a number for that. The new cases per day and per week, I thought I heard 50 a week last meeting. So if I'm a community member who is sending lots of emails and asking for us to nail this down and get more concrete, what I'm looking for is for there to be a column next to each of those, or a parentheses, or something that gives me a target.
Okay.
And I don't know that each one of them, that you can assign that to each one of those. But for those that we can, it might be something we want to consider.
Okay.
That's one person's feedback based on the interactions that I have with our community and the emails that I'm reading and the conversations, in the produce section.
So on
I
that,
want that silver bullet too. I
Yeah.
want that number more than anything. I want this to end. I was hoping I would go my entire career and never deal with a pandemic. I had prayed for that. Unfortunately, that's not where we are. I wish there was a number I could say, but I've kind of given that, and we can certainly do like a green, yellow, red, but I want to say this. If something new we learn, then it must change.
Right.
Our initial plan was that we were in orange with 25 patients. We were in red with a total active case load of 50. We were in red. That means all the time, full EOC, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day operation. We've had to adjust because we got to 3,600 active cases. So I don't mind putting something down, but if we learn something new, like if HHS changes the positivity rate and says, no, this is the new guidance that we've got to be able to shift to that.
Right. And I'm not asking for this to be inflexible. I mean, obviously, the name of this game for the last however many 200 days or whatever it's been has been flexibility and figuring out how the target does move. But I think the frustration level is increasing because while these are outlined, the goalpost, as I referred to at the last meeting, we don't know when it is we're crossing that goal line with each of these yet. And it's just my sense that that's adding to the frustration level in the community.
well, I would say that, I don't necessarily disagree. I don't think, and I've said on a lot of these conversations with the doctors and the quote experts, I don't know that we know where the goalpost is at. I think the easiest way to put this is there's a whole bunch we do not know. There is quite a bit we do know. There are some things that have changed. There are some things that have moved since the inception, and things have changed and developed over a period of time. My concern would be is if you're going to put some kind of bar or goalpost up, I think you further confuse the public if such has to change. And then you are going to have emails saying, well, you keep changing the rules of the game. Well, we don't make the rules. The virus makes the rules. The people make the rules from the standpoint of how they conduct themselves in public and how the spread occurs. So I don't know an easy answer to all of that. I think all of us would love for this to be over. I think all of us would like to be sitting here in person, have the place full of people. We'd like to go into our businesses. We'd like to go to the malls. We'd like to go to the theme
we
parks.
are.
We'd like to do all those things.
But we
like
are doing all
used
those
to.
things. And not to interrupt you, but I think that's some of the misperception in the community is people are saying, you need to open up. Well, I've been to all those places you've just referenced. There isn't any type of business that I want to conduct in this community that I've not been able to, except go sit at a bar until recently, and I plan to do that soon. So I think, and forgive me for interrupting you, but it frustrates me when people say that things aren't opened up, because they are, except for the bar, but now it is.
I don't
And
know
that's
that
good.
I alluded to anything wasn't opened up. All I was indicating is getting back to the normalcy of once were we before COVID, what I refer to as BC. I think a lot of us would like to be there. I don't know the easy answer. I don't know the silver bullet. I think as much as we can communicate to the public that we have information on is wise. It should be transparent. It should be real time as much as possible. But again, I don't know that I haven't heard any of the medical experts say where the goalpost is yet. As much as I'd love to say, it means nothing, I think we've proved it does mean something. So that's what I've got to say about all that. And again, thank you all for all of your attention and
could
time.
say-
Chairman, can
Yes.
can I just add something to that?
Certainly.
I think that the challenge with the benchmarks, and I know Alan of all people would love to have just a box he could check, is it's a totality of circumstances. So you could have maybe if all the hospitals were green, you could maybe have a higher positivity rate and still feel comfortable easing back on some of the response requirements. So I think that's the difficulty is it really, it's not just a matter of if all of these things, and I know it would be so much easier for the community if it was, if you could just check the boxes, but I think the medical experts look at the totality of all of those metrics, and one could be higher, but if another one is lower, it could offset that. So I think it's hard, and not being a medical professional, it's difficult to really understand if you move this line up, what does it do to this line over here? And I think they're still learning that as well. I think that they're still, but I do think that we could give this is sort of what we would hope to see happen. The 5% positivity rate is a benchmark now that could change, the green and the hospital. So I think maybe getting that kind of information out there, as long as we're clear in saying it's not any one thing that determines, they all kind of work off of one another, maybe that would help people understand.
Anything else? Seeing none, thank you again, Mr. Harris. We appreciate you coming down and giving us an update today. We also, of course, appreciate all the work your staff is now doing into the 200-plus day of activation. I know that it's a new world when it comes to some of those over there being there that long as compared to hurricanes and other disasters. All right, with that said, we're going to move to our awards and presentations. Commissioner Carey will read the retirement resolution for Ms. Diane Cruz. Commissioner Carey?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would move the following resolution of the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners recognizing Diane Cruz upon her retirement, honoring contributions to the Orlando Sanford International Airport in Seminole County. Whereas Diane Cruz has faithfully served the Orlando Sanford International Airport, Seminole County, and its citizens for nearly 2 decades. And whereas Diane Cruz was selected as the first female president and chief executive officer for Orlando Sanford International Airport. And whereas, under the guidance and leadership of Diane Cruz, the Orlando Sanford International Airport experienced an increase from 2.5 million passengers annually to 3.3 million passengers annually. And whereas, during her tenure, Diane Cruz oversaw several successful airport projects, including design and construction of the $65 million terminal expansion and renovation project. And whereas, in addition to her significant contributions to the Orlando Sanford International Airport, Diane Cruz has been a faithful public servant to the citizens of Seminole County, serving on multiple boards and committees, including the Wayne Dench Performing Arts Center, the Central Florida Zoo, the Seminole County Tourism Development Council, the Seminole County Regional Chamber of Commerce, and the Board of Directors for the Boy Scouts of America Central Florida Council. And whereas Diane Cruz will retire effective September 30th, 2020, after 19 years of service at the Orlando Sanford International Airport. Now therefore, be it resolved that the Board of County Commissioners of Seminole County, Florida, wish to express its appreciation to Diane Cruz on behalf of the citizens of Seminole County for her dedication and faithful service. Be it further resolved that this retirement resolution be presented to Diane Cruz, along with our sincere best wishes in her retirement, adopted this 22nd day of September 2020.
Second. All in favor? Aye. All right. If we would, Ms. Cruz, if you'd like to come down, and if the commission would don their masks, we'll get our photograph for Ms. Cruz.
Okay. I hope you can understand me with the mask on. Thank you so much for recognizing me today. It means so much. I think those of you who know me well know how strongly I feel about good governance and also about the airport. And the airport truly is an asset that belongs not just to the city of Sanford, but to the entire region, which is largely Seminole County. So in the 19 years that I've been here, I've had the privilege of working with many of you and even your staff, and it truly has been a pleasure. And though we might not always agree, I absolutely respect each of you, and I know that you serve with the best interest at heart of your constituents, and I truly believe that. So coming from the group of you that I respect, thank you so much.
Thank you, Diane.
Thank you, Diane.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
just
Commissioner
could I
Carey.
have a moment I want to say something personal to Diane. You know, Diane and I both grew up here in Sanford. We grew up close to each other. We're the same age, retiring about the same time. I'm a little bit behind her. Her husband, Rob, grew up next door to me. And so we've known each other a long time. And in addition to her service at the airport, she worked for the city of Sanford. So she's got many years of public service in addition to this. And she's got a great family and grandkids. So Diane, I hope you enjoy all of that.
Fantastic. Great. Thank you, Diane. All right, next we will have a proclamation read by Commissioner Lockhart for the Fire Prevention Week. Christina Diaz, the fire marshal, is here to receive the proclamation, as well as Chief Droz is also here in attendance today. Commissioner Lockhart?
Absolutely. Thank you. Commissioners, I'd like to move the following proclamation. Whereas Seminole County is committed to ensuring the safety and security of all residents and visitors, and whereas home fires killed 2,630 people in the United States in 2017, according to the National Fire Protection Association, and fire departments in the United States responded to 357,000 home fires. And whereas cooking is the leading cause of home fires in the United States, where fire departments responded to more than 173,200 annually between 2013 and 2017. And whereas 2 of every 5 home fires starts in the kitchen, with 31% of these fires resulting from unattended cooking. And whereas more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves. And whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire. And whereas Seminole County residents should stay in the kitchen when frying food on the stovetop, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around the cooking areas, and keep anything that can catch fire away from the stovetops. And whereas Seminole County residents should plan and practice a home fire escape and make sure everyone in the home knows how to call 911. And whereas the 2020 Fire Prevention Week theme, Serve Up Fire Safety in the Kitchen, effectively reminds Seminole County residents to stay alert and use caution when cooking to reduce the risk of kitchen fires. Now therefore be it proclaimed that the Seminole County Board of County Commissioners proclaims October 4th through 10th, 2020 as Fire Prevention Week and urges all residents and visitors of Seminole County to check their kitchens for fire hazards and use safe cooking practices during Fire Prevention Week, adopted this 22nd day of September, 2020.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, passes unanimous. Sounds like we ought not be cooking.
Well, right? I
You
would
need to go
add-
out
There's a lot
and
of
support
cooking
the
going on.
restaurants, for sure. You need to do that so they can pay their rent.
All right. Well, our fire marshal, if you would be so kind, Chief, if you'd like to join the commission on the floor here this morning, we'll get some photographs. Thank you, Commissioner Lockhart.
Commissioners, thank you for the proclamation, and certainly in the face of COVID, this type of proclamation that really looks at home cooking fires has taken on new significance with the activity that all of us have experienced over the last several months. In fact, just this past week, we had an apartment fire that had a stovetop cooking fire that filled the apartment with smoke. So really, this is something that we appreciate your support. It has taken on new significance, and if you're not familiar with your kitchens, DoorDash is always available.
Mr. Carey?
I have a question for you, Chief. This is about the time of the year where the firefighters, I know I've gone out with them many times over the years, we go out into the community and install smoke detectors and other devices. How has COVID impacted your ability to be able to do some of these important projects that y'all typically have done several times a year?
You know, that's a great question, and certainly when COVID, the advent of COVID, we started really pulling back on a lot of those things
Right.
because of social distancing. But that's something that I've began to iterate to our field personnel, is that while COVID has caused us to change the way we do business, it shouldn't change who we are and what we do. So we're ramping those programs up again. Certainly, there's a safe way to do those things.
Right.
And in fact, you know, just recently, within the last week, we got notified that we were awarded an almost $200,000 grant to do this very thing within
Right.
our community, along with our regional partners. So that's something that's going to have a renewed focus within our community, and we're going to be installing over the next 12 months 5,000 smoke detectors in our most at-risk neighborhoods within
Great.
all of Seminole County.
Well, it's an important program, and I'm glad to know that we got some additional grant funding, and I look forward to being able, for y'all to be able to get back out in the community, and maybe after COVID passes, I'll come volunteer one Saturday to help you.
Yes, ma'am, I look forward to that.
Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Chief. All right, we'll move on to our consent agenda items. Public participation pursuant to Florida law, the public has a right to be heard on all propositions except when the Board of County Commissioners is acting on ministerial or emergency matters or conducting a meeting exempt from Section 286.011 Florida statutes. Public comment time on propositions shall be 3 minutes for individuals and 6 minutes for groups properly represented, and the right to be heard on quasi-judicial hearings is governed by the Florida law. The public will be provided the opportunity to be heard on non-agenda matters at the end of the meeting. Proper decorum shall be observed. If members of the public would like to make a comment or attending in person, you will need to be called on first. If you use a computer, iPad, or other electronic devices, click on the raise hand feature, and you'll be called on next in order. Lastly, if you've called on a telephone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9. You'll be called in the order that you've raised your hand. Do we have anyone here that wishes to speak on items 3 through 34 on the consent agenda?
Mr. Chairman, I have an additional item.
Yes, ma'am.
Item number 41, which was included under the county manager's report. It was a late coming in item from the Florida Housing Corporation. We received an additional $1.1 million in CARES Act money through that program, and we need to do an amendment to the agreement in order to access those funds. So I would ask you to move that onto the consent agenda so we can start using those monies as soon as possible. We intend to utilize those funds for the eviction relief program.
Okay. Any inquiries to the county manager on item 41? Commissioner Carey?
Not on item 41. I have another item I'd like to pull for separate discussion.
Okay. Commissioner Carey, please.
Item number 30.
Number 30.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Delory.
Item number 22, if I may.
Number 22, Commissioner Delory. Anyone else? Commissioner Lockhart? Commissioner Considine? And I have nothing as well, other than the ones that have already been asked to be pulled. So with that said, I will look for a motion for items 3 through 34, less 22 and 30, an addition of 41.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Hearing none, passes unanimous. Let's pull item 22. Commissioner Delary?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In reviewing the item in our packet, there's two different philosophies here for these two different companies. This is for the register for the short-term rentals. The one that staff is recommending is we have to pay up front, and it's lump sum, and we're at risk. The one that's the Pro Champ, it is, we're actually sharing in half of the fees that are collected, and there's no money out of pocket. And those are two different philosophies, and I wanted to have discussions about it, because I was under the impression as we were moving forward that it would be, we wouldn't be having that risk, and it would be the company that would actually be doing all the research and putting everything together. And so that's why I wanted to pull this, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Didn't know if the other commissioners had any input.
Input from the other portions of the board? My input is somewhat similar to that on 22, is one of the ones that I wanted pulled as well, is the understanding that I had as well is this would be a pay-as-you-go.
That's what I was saying.
Instead of a pay up front. If we don't have performance, we don't pay. So if you're so inclined to consider a motion, I would absolutely support that.
Mr. Chairman, can we have staff confirmation that that's how the Pro Champ will work, that it will be a pay-as-you-go? Because I had a lot of questions about this item myself. I had there was a lot of emails back and forth with me regarding their recommendation, and
Sure.
so I'd just like to hear from staff confirmation that
Ms. Cohen?
that the other one, because the other one is slightly less money until you get to 500 registers.
Right.
And I think, unfortunately, due to COVID, I think a lot of folks that have been in the short-term rental business have probably started thinking about selling some of those houses since they couldn't really rent them.
Right, exactly. Good morning, Ms. Cohen, please, when you're ready.
Good morning. This is a request for proposals, and based on the evaluation factors, not only the cost, that the recommendation is to that Granicus. Now, we went back and checked the rate that they proposed in the proposal, and we confirmed one, Granicus is upfront cost based on the number of units that the scope of services include, and the other one is on a ongoing basis. As they collect, they will retain the 50%. So that has been confirmed with the firms.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to put that out there.
Sure.
From staff on the record, since there'd been so much conversation about it.
Absolutely.
And I think that Pro Champs also does our foreclosures and have done a good job.
That's correct. Mr.
and-
Chairman?
Yes, I would concur. I think that if they're already familiar with our system, it would be much easier transition for them to just move from one to the other. Probably it's a
Right.
matter of flipping switches in the program is what my guess would be. So with that said, any further discussion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to approve Pro Champ.
Second.
Good motion and second. Any further discussion? Seeing none. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Like sign? Hearing none. Pass unanimous. Item number 30, Commissioner Carey.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. Item number 30 is for the architectural and engineering services for Fire Station number 39, which is in my district. And as you all know, we have been site hunting and trying to get a fire station, a new station in this district for quite some time. All four of the firms that are shortlisted and recommended for ranking, because this is a CCNA, it will negotiate with the number one firm. If they can't work it out, they go to number two, and so on and so forth. But the top three firms are within a point. They're scored at 10, 11, and 11. So as I read through the comments and I read through thinking about this station, an important factor of this is schedule. There's clearly interest in our business here at the county. We had 13 submittals for this particular item. But out of the 4 firms that are ranked here, the schedules vary significantly. And Schinkel and Schultz schedule is 6 months, for example, and Bentley is 8. And the firm that staff is recommending, their schedule is 10 months, and that's Architect Design Group. And as I read the comments, again, I know that scheduling is important based on the comments both by Chief Droz and Deputy Chief Kinley. So our 2 fire officials both ranked Schinkel and Schultz number 1, and I feel confident that it probably had something to do with the schedule based on their comments. Based on that, Mr. Chairman, and the time-sensitive nature of getting this station done, I would like to move to have the ranking be number 1, Schinkel and Schultz, number 2, Architect Design Group, and number 3, Bentley, number 4 being Sweet Sparkman.
Second.
Hey, we have a motion and a second. I would concur completely. You know, time is of the essence, especially during the time of COVID and things being, delayed and pushed back and all the things everybody's struggling with.
Building supplies being in short
Right.
supply, so.
Exactly. And of course, nothing can ever happen quick enough around here for me, so. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Hearing none. Item 30 carries unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, move to approve item number 36.
Motion for number 36.
36.
I'm sorry, Mr.
You mean 35?
35, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I corrected myself.
The
Second.
county attorney's agenda. Okay, a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Carries unanimous.
Mr. Chairman, now approve item number 36.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Seeing none, passed unanimous.
Mr. Chairman,
Commissioner Laurie?
before we move on to item number 37, which is on a regular agenda item, I have to declare a conflict of interest. I've talked to the county attorney, Paul Chipok, and I'm filing a Form 8B memorandum of voting conflict for elected officials. And I'm filing this document because I presently am employed by Walt Disney World, and I've been employed there for many years. And when you hear this, there could potentially be a conflict of interest because Brightline is actually talking about one of his terminus points actually potentially stopping at Walt Disney World, and I want to make sure that I file this form. There's no conflicts, and I'm fully transparent, and I'm going to give this to the clerk. I'd like to leave the room, and then once this discussion is over, please call me back.
Very well. Will do.
Mr. Chairman, this
Commissioner
prompts
Carey?
a question, because Commissioner Valari is also our Sunrail representative. And so how is that going to be impacted when this comes to Sunrail? Because this is,
As long as I don't vote on this and I declare another conflict, as long as I don't vote on this here, don't have any
Right.
input, and as long as I bring that vote that I abstained from to that Sunrail board
Right.
and don't vote as an individual, but I'm voting as a board member, there shouldn't be a conflict.
okay, well, I want to make sure, because I think we have the ability to have alternatives at Sunrail.
We're also filing a question with the Board of Ethics.
Okay.
So we're waiting for a response.
Yeah,
So if
because,
we have this conversation, I need to leave the room.
Well, I think, Commissioner
well-
Laurie, one moment, just 1 second. I think the question on the table is, I think Commissioner Carey is concerned, as our representative of Sunrail, how this may affect those meetings and decisions as our representative of Sunrail when it comes to this issue.
I'd rather ask the county attorney for that input.
Mr. Chipok, if you could weigh in on that, please?
Yes. As Commissioner Delory stated, we have filed with Commission on Ethics for a request for an opinion. I believe the Commission on Ethics will be taking it up at their October 23rd meeting. and hopefully we'll have a response. In the alternative, with that, Commissioner DeLaury is the appointed representative of Seminole County to the Rail Commission. If there is a conflict declared, you may want to take a preemptory action at this point in time, where the conflict is declared, and he can't vote at that, if you want to appoint an alternate for that specific reason.
Well, I think we have an alternate already appointed.
Yes.
And so I know that we've appointed alternates many times, and they're not allowed. For example, at the Expressway Authority, an alternate is not allowed based on our bylaws. And so is an alternate allowed at Sunrail? Because that's such a small board, and our opinion is really important on these Sunrail votes, especially with the ones coming up, that have to do with, other items. So if they're, I just want to make sure that I don't want Commissioner DeLaury to get in a bad position. And at the same time, though, I want to make sure that our voice is able to be heard. So if that's an alternate at that meeting on October 27th, does Sunrail allow for that alternate to be there and vote?
Sunrail does not have a explicit set of directives as far as policy goes for operation. So off the top of my head, I am not quite sure. I will check with the other councils of the other other four local government partners to make sure that no one is aware of anything that would cause an objection for an alternate to be placed in there. So I will have an answer back, but I would say, since you will not be meeting until...
Well, we meet in October, so
Right.
this meeting's October 27th.
So
At
if staff
Sunrail.
could get back with us
Yeah.
We will get back with you at the next
through
meeting.
the county manager and let us know what the circumstances are on that. I think it's important that
Yeah.
we have representation for our county that's not conflicted out on that board. So, very
Leave the
good,
room.
Commissioner DeLaury,
Leave the
absolutely.
room now.
Yes, you're good to go. We'll
That
send
man
somebody to
wants to
retrieve you.
go.
Your mask, don't forget your mask, Commissioner DeLaury.
I did have to
Till I interrupted him.
Okay. So item 37 will be a presentation by Brightline, Virgin Rail. Katie Mitzer, Brightline Public Affairs Manager, and Michael Sigilis, Executive Vice President of Rail Infrastructure, are here to present the item. Folks, if you would approach the podium, welcome this morning. Good to see y'all.
Thank you. Appreciate your taking the time to hear from us this morning. What we're asking for is the county's support as a constituent member of the Rail Commission on an MOU that would have the purpose of exploring the possibility of sharing Sunrail track with Brightline track to create an east-west spine for Sunrail. So the Brightline project is going very well. As you probably know, our track is completed between Miami and West Palm Beach, and service was underway that was stopped by COVID, but can reopen when this emergency is over. The portion from West Palm Beach to Orlando, a $2.7 billion construction project, is well underway now, 40% complete. We're now entering the planning phase for extending our system to Tampa, which was always envisioned as the terminus point, i.e. a rail system, a high-speed rail system that connects South Florida, Miami, West Palm Beach, Fort Lauderdale, Central Florida, Orlando, and Tampa. So in the process of connecting to Tampa, we will be traveling from the current terminus point of Orlando International Airport to the I-4 corridor via the OUC rail spur right-of-way, the existing Sunrail Central Florida commuter rail corridor, and then on the Highway 417 to the Disney World area. We plan to have a station at the Disney World area and then extend from Disney World directly to Tampa. the portion from Orlando Airport to Disney is eligible to be shared. So it'll be a shared corridor with shared dispatch, shared infrastructure, shared positive train control operating system. We are currently undertaking a similar process in South Florida with the Tri-Rail commuter rail and also a future Miami-Dade commuter rail project. So we're experienced in making this interface work. So this is the basic system. The idea would be that the furthest point east that is currently considered would be the Innovation Way area, which is a future growth area. But at the outset, it would connect Orlando Airport, travel south, and then connect with at the Meadowwood Station, the current Meadowwood Station of Sunrail. And that would be the exchange point for a north-south and an east-west line. And then potentially a station at Hunters Creek and the station at Disney. There's many large benefits to this project. Obviously, the economic impact is enormous for the construction period. $6.2 billion in total economic impact, a little over $3 billion in GDP impact, 37,000 job years. These are pretty high-paying jobs, high-paying craft jobs. 1.8 billion in labor income, 626 million in taxes paid. Brightline's a private company. It's operating for profit. We make profit, we pay taxes. Recurring annually after the construction period, 153 million of annual economic impact, 86 million in GDP impact, 1,300 annual jobs, and 53 million in labor income, 20 million in annual taxes paid. So this would generate economic benefit at a time when our Central Florida community really needs it. It also, importantly, would provide greater mobility in our community, an east-west mobility that is called for by the Orlando Economic Partnership. Creates a car-free option for residents to communicate from the northern parts of Volusia, Seminole, Orange County to the airport, direct connection to the airport. And we expect will be eligible for federal grants. So that's the importance of getting this MOU in place so that planning can be done to show a unified effort to the federal government to try to obtain grants to the extent they become available. The timing of the project, we have completed the 15% design for this first segment to Disney World. And we've completed that with the idea that Sunrail could potentially become a participant. But to really advance the design further, we need to have a full understanding of what that would look like, what the service levels would be, and how the two systems would interoperate in specific detail. What's that say? I can't read it.
The TBD,
Yeah.
the environmental NEPA process.
Yeah, so the NEPA process, we are just getting kicked off. The NEPA process for this particular leg of the project is not expected to be foreboding or large because it's a already improved corridor. Every stitch of the way is on an existing highway or an existing railway. But it is important that we get that process underway. The project may qualify for a categorical exemption. That's the least intrusive type of NEPA approval. And to obtain this type of approval, all that is required is the completion of a worksheet and the analysis of the impacts, a detailed analysis of the types of impacts that have been specified that this project will create. For example, noise, vibration are expected to be impacts that would have to be studied in a full manner and presented to the sponsoring agency for the federal government, which would be the Federal Railroad Administration. What else are we doing? Oh, good. So there's another point here that if we tried to proceed, if we went ahead on our own with just our own project and proceeded and then tried to add Sunrail later, that's a very difficult change. But doing the opposite is an easy change. In other words, including Sunrail now and then backing off from that is a fairly easy change to accommodate. So we need to determine if the NEPA process will include Sunrail as we are embarking on it right now. Federal funding opportunities, infrastructure bill has been debated in Congress and will continue to be debated, but is expected to be approved sometime in the first half of next year. There's also a CRISI grant program. We have become quite familiar with this grant program. It's specified for railroad improvements, and it is expected to triple in size. So we need to be in a position to apply for these grants in the first quarter of next year. Timeline, 15% design is complete. We would like to obtain approval from the CFCRC to have an MOU in place so that we can jointly study this project at the October 29th meeting of the CFCRC. Also in Q4, we would kick off the NEPA process. We need to do community outreach in the communities that may be affected by this project. So that would include Hunters Creek and Meadowwoods, among others. And we need to conclude right-of-way leases, which are currently in an active state of development and exchange. And need to do design review, need to have design review done by those stakeholders whose right-of-way we would be utilizing. In 2021, we would complete through 60% design. That would give us the ability to apply for the other permits that we need, the state permits, the Water Management District environmental resource permits, and we would expect to have information about grants at that point in time. And in 2022, permitting would be completed, and we'd be ready to begin the financing process and initiate construction with the idea that a completion in 2025 would be possible. That's it. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Any questions from the commission? Commissioner Carey?
Not so much a question as a comment. You know, Central Florida Expressway Authority, we have worked with Brightline on the connection between Miami, West Palm, and Orlando International Airport. We've talked about the importance of a connection to the airport from Sunrail ever since the conversations about Sunrail, how we would make that connection. It's not an easy thing to do because of the amount of growth and development out in that particular area. But this is an opportunity for us to also provide a connection from Sunrail directly to the airport. The Expressway Authority, we've had conversations with Brightline regarding, you know, our sections of 417 and other ways for them to connect if they're looking at alternative versions. And the most important reason I think that we should support this is because in order for our Sunrail system to be successful, we all know it has to get to the airport. That's the number one issue that we hear. And so I think that it's important that we support this. I hope that the Sunrail board will also support it. The other thing that doesn't, you know, cause me any pause at all is there's a 30-day termination by either party for no cause. So I appreciate the time that the Brightline representatives spent with me in a briefing last week. And if you're ready for action, Mr. Chairman, I'd be
Let's
ready
go
to
to the
make a
public
motion.
real quick, see if we have anybody from the public. Any other questions from the board before we go to the public? Seeing none, it looks like we have one that may want to speak, Mr. Tom Conley. Mr. Tom Conley, do you wish to speak? Please step up to the podium, sir. We got to be able to hear.
Maybe someone would help him
Somebody
find
could
his
help
way to the
Mr.
podium.
Conley to the
That would be
podium.
fabulous.
Welcome, Mr. Conley. Please take your time. If you would just give us your name and address for the record, please, sir.
Name is Tom Connolly. I live at 552 Wind Meadow Street in Altamont Springs.
Yes, sir. Good morning and welcome. And you have some input on the Brightline discussion? Please go
Well,
ahead.
My first question, was there going to be also a Sunrail presentation?
No, this is a Brightline presentation.
Okay, then my comments, I'm concerned. I've been working on, with the Sunrail projects from 2006. And my concern is, in an area that has over 2 million people, the 3 counties, that Sunrail, I think they've worked very hard, but the ridership has never developed. When you look at it, that about 3,000 residents use Sunrail, and the way it's brought in is they said, well, each resident makes 2 trips on a day, and then the 5 days a week for the year will make it like 500 trips per resident. I count about 3,000 residents. And for this, the Sunrail budget, the last one I saw, was about $60 million. And I think we're heading for a major problem in that if you have 3,000 residents who are using the system and $60 million, that's like $20,000 a resident to provide them Sunrail service. And considering it's federal, state, and county taxes, which are providing most of this funding, I'm very apprehensive that this will continue. So that's my concern. I wanted to bring it to the board. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Conley. Maybe we could have staff, we've got Mr. Conley's information here with his phone number. Maybe if we could have staff reach out to Mr. Conley with the Sunrail budgetary details for some discussion on that matter to see if we can assist him with any information he may need. Okay, anyone else here in the public desire to speak on the Brightline agenda item 37?
Mr. Chairman.
Seeing none, I'll move to the board for action.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Constantine?
Mr. Conley, you have some very good points. And one of the things that we've always thought of in the vision of Sunrail from the very beginning, back even when I was sponsoring the bill in the legislature, was the extension of the project, not just the spine that it is today from Ponciana to DeBerry, but that it would extend with other opportunities to Tampa, to Jacksonville, to Miami. And Brightline has provided the vision. The old Flagler Railroad has provided the vision for them to go from Miami to Orlando and the airport. And this is an extension that we've always envisioned that would expand the need, the ridership of Sunrail. And I see this as the first natural extension of that. So I see this as a great opportunity, and that it's, being done by a private corporation is even more important, I think, than anything. So I see this as a very exciting opportunity, and I will make the motion that we approve the memorandum of understanding with the Commuter Rail Commission to use Sunrail corridor and enable Sunrail connection to the Orlando International Airport.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, like sign. Seeing none, with Commissioner Delory, who has been recused. All right, if we could send a staff member to ask
Go get him.
Commissioner Delory to rejoin us.
Mr. Chairman, I did look to see that I already have the CFCRC meeting on the 29th on my calendar, as I'm the backup for that
Correct.
committee. So
Good.
if for some reason that's an issue, I already have it blocked on my calendar.
Good, thank you.
And thank you,
Staff,
Mr.
which is-
Conley, for coming here. I know
Thank
it's
you all
been
very
difficult.
much. Appreciate it. Absolutely.
Always loved Winwood.
So,
Chairman?
Mr. Chipak, as soon as you understand what the CFRC,
Or Wynn
if you will
Meadows.
get with Commissioner Lockhart and let her know, as well as Commissioner Delory, who can attend and whether there's any conflicts there. Commissioner Carey?
Can we take a 5-minute break while we're waiting for Commissioner Delory to get back
Sure,
in?
let's take, it's now 10:47. Let's make sure we're back here at no later than 5 minutes till 11.
Got 7 minutes.
I meant
Meeting for September 22nd, 2020, back to order. Next item on the agenda is the county manager and staff briefings. We have item 38 is a presentation by Renaissance Planning Group on the East Lake Mary Boulevard Small Area Study. David Nielsen will be here presenting the status of the update. Mr. Nielsen, welcome today.
Thank you, Mr.
Chairman, Commissioners, County Manager, County Attorney, thank you for the opportunity to give you a brief overview of the East Lake Mary Boulevard Small Area Study. We are still in the data and synthesis portion of the project. We have not made any decisions yet, so this is more of just a short informative overview for you. We want you to obviously be informed about the project, but we also hope to have your participation and your input moving forward with it. So the study area for this project really runs along East Mary Boulevard, south and east of the airport from Mellonville Avenue up to State Road 46. It contains parcels in both Seminole County and the city of Sanford. And at a first glance, if somebody went through here, they'd see a lot of undeveloped land. But in reality, there are a number of distinct character districts in the study area that we're dealing with and will take great care to figure out how they all fit together. You've got the airport, which is an economic driver, and at the opposite end of that, you've got the environmental lands of Lake Jessup that provide floodwater storage, they provide wildlife habitat, they provide recreation opportunities. You've got recreation areas, you've got subdivisions, and then you've got this unique enclave, the Lake District, that is unique anywhere, but especially in this urban setting. It has large lots, it has pristine lakes, it has beautiful, mature hardwoods. So you've got this really unique area that we need to account for as well. So we have all these different character districts that we're going to be dealing with as we move forward in this project. And what facilitated this project from the staff's perspective is there's a general growth in this area. There's growing traffic congestion in this area. And then there's also been some requests for annexation for different types of residential development. So all those things together kind of led staff to decide, let's do a small area study and really look in depth at this area. So what Renaissance is working with staff on is creating a clear framework that's going to guide development moving forward. So a little bit about the schedule. As I said, we're in the data gathering and synthesis stage right now. We're starting the visioning. In October, we'll be looking at some different alternative framework plans, and then in November, putting together the small area document. One of the key things to this study is going to be stakeholder engagement. It's going to be a two-way process. We want to hear people's ideas, opinions, their concerns. What are the issues? What are the opportunities? We've already put out a survey to businesses and residents within the study area, and we've got over 70 responses back from people, and they've really given us a great feel for the values of their community. What's important to them? What are the issues? What are the opportunities? What are the bad intersections and traffic congested areas? We've really got a good feel for this area based off the responses that we've gotten. We've had some one-on-one conversations with residents in the area already, and moving forward in the project, we'll be having 2 community workshops as well as some formal presentations. So there'll be a variety of opportunities for community engagement in this project. So as I said, we're in the data collection stage right now. We've been looking at a variety of things and mapping them, anything from land use to the road network, to bike and ped networks, storm drainage, environmental features, the areas around the airport. And we've also been looking at the regulatory framework. What are the comp plans? What does the zoning and land development code say? The vision plan for Sanford, some of the transportation plans, economic development strategies, as well as we've been looking at guidance from the FAA on how they handle development around the airport based on noise zones. What are their recommendations for different type of uses in different conditions. So as we synthesize all that data, we move into the visioning stage.
And using a set of core planning principles that look at mobility, accessibility, health, safety, overarching and overlapping planning concepts that we'll be looking to start synthesizing all the data we've gathered. And we're going to put together a vision map. And what a vision map really does is starts putting pieces in place. We start looking at which areas need to be preserved and enhanced, which areas of the study area are ripe for growth. And then between those two areas, how do you buffer them? How do you put transitions in land uses? Where do you improve transportation networks? And by the same token, maybe there's some areas where you want to pull back on transportation, areas that are cut-through areas now that don't need to be cut-through areas of traffic and things like that. We start looking at multimodal networks. How are you going to piece together pedestrian networks, bicycle networks to make it a better place in all areas? So we put together this vision map, and it's kind of a graphic framework then of what we're going to do moving forward into the framework plans. And the framework plans start to get specific. We start looking at different densities, different uses, different traffic patterns. And what our goal is to put together 3 different levels of densities, intensities that offer potential a path into the future for this area. And once we have these plans together, then that's when we bring it back to the community. We bring it back to staff. We bring it back to the commission, and we start saying, look at these 3 and tell us, what do you like? What don't you like? What do you see is the vision for this study area in the future? And we'll start prioritizing what the things that we have that are important to the community, the things that we put down that the community says, maybe not. And we'll start looking at what the values are and the way people want to see this grow in the future. And then from there, we'll come up with a small area plan document, which is really our final recommendations that we will submit to staff, that they will use as guidance in the future. They'll, obviously coordinate it with the city of Sanford, with DOT, with the other entities involved. But that will be our final document. And again, when we have the small area plan put together, we'll come back to the community for another community meeting. I will mention, in this time of COVID, we're not quite sure how we will do community meetings, if they will be in person, if they'll be virtual, if there'll be a combination of the two. We're still looking at that right now, but we will come back to the community with the final plan, get comments on that. We'll make any revisions we need, and we'll have a final small area document that we will come and present to you then. And that's really the overview of what we're doing the next 2 to 3 months. So I would love to hear any comments that y'all have on the study area that you might want to offer us at this time for guidance.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Nelson. One thing that I would definitely like to see consideration given to is bikeways and pathways that are off the roadways. This is something that continues to be a problem as we have, throughout the state, integrated bicyclists in the roadway, which I understand why it was done and the methodology behind it, but it honestly is just not safe, and how things are done throughout other regions of our country, as well as other countries themselves, in giving those multi-use type pathways for bicyclists, walkers, et cetera, et cetera. So I'd very much like to see some emphasis placed on that, as well as connectability to any available parks and recreation assets throughout the county, and getting access to those as well. That would be my initial input. Commissioner Carey?
Well, people who get notice about these types of studies are not always very broad-based. And so I know that there is a lot of interest from people in the community outside of who got noticed about this small area study. And so I think, and they, you know, and the residents don't necessarily know what consultant we have doing a study, so they don't know to go and call this particular firm. And so what I'd like to see when we have these small area studies going on, which we don't do very often, is for us to put a link on our website saying if you'd like to make public comment, put the presentations and keep the materials up there as they're developed, maps and different things that could easily be uploaded from the consultant to our website, and allow anybody who travels along that road really to be able to give their input, and maybe have a way for them to, you know, either sign it or leave their address or something so that we have some idea where they are in proximity to this particular area. But I've had a number of residents out in that area. As you know, Mr. Chairman, Lake Mary Boulevard is a dividing line between my district and yours.
Correct.
And so there's a lot of people on both sides. A lot of people don't realize now, because my district used to go all the way down to Lake Jessup, they think it's still in my district. And so, you know, they'd like to be able to have input into this small area study, but they don't really know how to other than calling my office. And so I think it would be much more efficient if we had something on our website so that anybody that wanted to have input, and we could then direct the people and the calls that we get, whether it be my office, your office, or anybody else's office, directly to that site, and then everything could be gathered electronically. So
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Kraft. I agree completely. I mean, this area of our county is, you know, one of the
it's the
few
eastern
areas.
entrance.
Right. I mean, it's.
You know, it's our eastern entrance.
That's
so
right, it is the
it's
eastern
important.
entrance, and it's the area that's likely to develop in the next decade or two. So we probably ought to be doing this the right way instead of going back and revisiting the flaws that we may have. And in that whole area, there's also, I spoke to Mr. Durr to verify, is we have the enhancement of the landscaping through that region coming into the county that
The
FDOT
Lake Mary
is.
overlay.
Correct. That is going to help us fund some of that as well. So we'll look forward to seeing that. But I want to make sure that all that's included for the community, Mr. Durr, as part of this process so that they understand the totality of everything being considered in this realm. So,
Mr. Chairman?
Absolutely. Yes, Commissioner DeLaury?
Thank you. And, Mr. Chairman, I'm glad you brought up the conversation regarding bicycle trails. Just north of this is the Lake Monroe Loop, and I really believe that there needs to be, in this study, on how to get this community or this area connected to the Lake Monroe Loop, because once you get connected to that loop, you go anywhere almost in the state of Florida. And if you really look at it, you can go to the Atlantic, goes all the way to the Gulf of Mexico. So there needs to be that connection somehow. Also, on the southwest side of this study area is an area that's called the Yaloma Spur. And I really think that this study area needs to be looking at the Yaloma Spur. Now, do I think the Yaloma Spur should be developed at this time? No. But at some time in the future, because we're talking about the future, the Yaloma Spur with Sunrail. And Sunrail, if you look at the contracts, there is an option for that spur to be exercised and taken over by Sunrail. And I want to make sure that that's actually addressed as well, because that spur actually goes into this area, not all the way through it, but it does touch it. Another thing that we should be looking at, because we're looking at big picture, long-term, would be, I want to make sure we're looking at fire and response time, because that could be a potential issue in the future. And obviously, so close to the airport, we may have to look at the sound contour lines again, and I just want to make sure that that's actually looked at as well. That'd be my input, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, on that sound issue, you know, in Cameron Heights, for example, and other developments that have occurred out there, we actually have in the development order that anything that's within the 65 dBLs has to have a notice on their deed.
Right.
So to make sure that people are aware that they're moving into an area that is a noise area, because, you know, the airport's been there since it was a Navy base, and about the only homes that were out there at that time were around the Pinecrest area. And so now that we have all these new homes, obviously people aren't going to want the airport to make noise, and we all know that's impossible. But, yeah, just making sure that that information is all out there. But like I said, our constituents do not know who the consultants necessarily are, and if they didn't get a notice, they don't know how to do anything. And I think that we should put it out there on social media, and I think we should put a link on our website. So-
Agreed. Commissioner Lockhart?
I was going to actually tag on to what Commissioner Carey was suggesting about social media. I think that the Nextdoor app is something that this is built for, because we can target specific neighborhoods and communities, and I would love it if our community information folks could take whatever information we have here, share it there, and then point them to the website, because frankly, I don't even know how many people would know to look at the website.
Right.
Or how to find it on there. So citizen input in that particular community is so needed and has been offered over the years in a variety of ways, and I think to continue to keep them highly engaged. And I feel like it's not my district, but I certainly served that district for many years, and I'm very familiar with it. So I've had people calling me as well.
Right.
So I think giving them as many opportunities as we possibly can to know what's going on and to feel that they are being heard is critically important. So any way that we can do that would be great.
And as soon as that gets up, Mr. Chairman, if our offices could all receive a notice that it's up so that we can send that out to all the people that have been contacting us, that'd be great.
Okay. Anything else from the commission? Seeing none, staff clear on what the desire of the board is to communicate with the community and how we would do that?
Yes, sir, we've got it.
Okay. Maybe PIO could be integrated in this fashion to help with this?
Absolutely.
That'd be great. All right, very good. Thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. All right, next up is number 39, which is our CARES update. Ms. Gay, how long do you perceive that's going to take?
Well,
We've got our
We haven't
investment
put it-
advisor
Yeah, but-
holding in Houston, waiting to come in.
I would suggest that maybe we go, well, actually, he's here.
He's right here.
Oh, that's right.
He's holding in the audience.
But I would suggest, since he's in from out of town, maybe you take him first, and then,
Okay.
because I'm here all day.
Mr.
How
Chairman, we
much-
only have one item this afternoon, so is there a possibility we could just do the CARES Act after we finish all the public hearing stuff at the end of the day?
Thank you. That's what I was going to be pushing for.
Mr. Chairman, also, there is an group of individuals that'd like to discuss items when it comes to the COVID-19 update that we had.
I'm aware of that, and I'll bring that up as we get down to here before the break.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right. Let's get Mr. McIntyre. Are you ready to go, sir? If you would, let's go ahead and do that. We'll move item 39 to this afternoon, and we will have our county investment advisor, Mr. McIntyre, give us our investment portfolio update. Welcome, sir. Good to see you in person. Behind that mask.
You can tell he has no news because he doesn't even have anything in his hands.
That's right.
I mean, come on.
Status
At
quo.
least you can look like you're hauling it all up here.
I'm actually smiling just in case my eyes don't give it away.
Yeah.
This
No.
is unusual, I have to admit. And everything we've dealt with recently is very unusual here. I wanted to mention some things. You guys obviously are well aware of what's going on with COVID-19, but what I want to point out is that it has pretty well overshadowed the economic data. So the data isn't making any difference. It's not moving the market. There's a lot of opinions on the data. Data should be objective. Right now it's subjective. There's lots and lots of noise. You know, the Fed obviously has cut to zero debt in March. The thing that's changed with the Fed is that they have indicated that they're going to be on hold for at least 3 years. Again, a lot of people feel like that's going to be significantly different than 3 years. Some people think much longer. Some people think it might not be as long. But right now, the guidance that we have is 3 years for rates to be at zero at least. One thing I want to point out about Congress is that the Fed did have a meeting, and the Fed chairman said it's very important that Congress continues to act. He can only do so much in terms of monetary policy. He is asking, this being Fed Chairman Powell, for additional fiscal policy. And fiscal policy has driven the market and driven the rebound so far. I'll come back to that. Stock markets, at least until very recently, had continued to rally. Right now, the reason that they have halted the rally has halted, is the idea that the Congress may not be able to come up with additional dollars. As I mentioned before, interest rates are at zero, market yields are at record lows or very near record lows, and there are negative global yields right now. Throughout most of Europe, yields are negative. So I want to point out just a couple of employment graphs that I think are very, very important. The first one up there in the left-hand corner is the total non-farm payrolls, and it goes back a ways. So you can see that little dip that reflects the Great Recession, or the last recession, as it were. And then the climb that we had going from the bottom of the recession to the top, which was in February. And then we lost 22 million jobs very quickly off non-farm payrolls. So we have seen really good job numbers in terms of jobs coming back, but I just want you to recognize that of the 22 million jobs that were lost from businesses, 10.5 million have since returned. And the pace of those job returns has slowed significantly. We only had 1.4 million that came back in the last jobs report. The other graph there I want to point out is that there are two significantly different unemployment rates. The headline unemployment rate is 8.4%. That has come down significantly since the high. But what's happening is a lot of people are not actually looking for work right now because they don't feel like there are jobs available for them, or they feel like it's not safe to be out looking for jobs. So if you look at the broader unemployment rate, the U6, which includes people who are working part-time but would rather work full-time, and people who are not actually looking right now, it's above 14%.
Can you stay there for a minute, sir? Does that also include the individuals that have been furloughed, that are still employed?
That's another one of the real noisy items, because a lot of people are misclassifying themselves still as being furloughed when the reality is, for instance, airline furloughs.
That's my point.
Yeah, there's a lot of airline furloughs. Airlines got $25 billion in September. That aid is essentially gone. I was in the airport the other day. You and I had a conversation. Business travel is down 88%. International travel is down 90%. So have the airlines actually gotten to the point where they're ready to carry on without aid? No. Do they get additional aid? No. So again, there's a lot of noise there. I think a lot of people who feel like they're furloughed are actually not furloughed. It's going to turn into permanent. It is an issue. It is noisy right now. We're not sure how to actually put all the pieces together. Consumer spending is important because this is what drives economic growth in the U.S. The blue lines are retail sales month over month. You can see the big decline when people were shuttered. You can see the big increases in May and June when the economy started to broadly reopen. But what I want to point out is that a lot of that retail sales increase had to do with the stimulus payment that went to individuals and an additional $600 per week federal supplement on unemployment benefits, which has since ran out. So you can see in the month-to-month retail sales spending that spending has slowed significantly as the dollars that the federal government gave to individuals has dried up. So Commissioner DeLauria and I had a very brief conversation, which I agree with him, and one of the things is that all of this $3.3 trillion worth of federal aid was granted for valid reasons, but it didn't result in production. We didn't fund infrastructure. We didn't fund projects. We just burned through it, and that's important to note because we're going to need more if we're going to continue the growth. And one thing I want to point out here is this is economic growth. Obviously, the two big red lines are our contraction, represent the recession. The expected third quarter growth, which is almost complete, is somewhere around 25%. So, of the 32% that was lost, or if you add the 5 in there, a third of the, again, there's a lot of noise here. I don't want to get into the details, but I do want to acknowledge that third quarter is going to be a very good quarter, but that's almost irrelevant because fourth quarter is more important. I will tell you, we look at a lot of different economists. At least a couple of economists believe that fourth quarter is going to be flat, even potentially down. That's not the universe of economists. That is some of the economists that we look at. So, What is certain at this point is that fourth quarter growth without additional fiscal stimulus is not going to look anything like the third quarter growth. We paid for that. First off, I want to point out that your August portfolio yield was 92. Your estimated September portfolio yield is 90. August turned out to be a little higher than I thought it was going to be. What I don't know is the fund flow. Available options look just kind of like they have in the last 6 months. They're not very good. A one-year treasury is at 12, a two-year treasury is at 14. It's very, very flat. You don't get additional dollars by going into agencies. There is some additional spread going into callables. You have to go out pretty far to do that. So you're taking market risk. And what we don't want to do is take risks now that we weren't willing to take before, as much as that hurts to do. Your yield is still very high. Your yield will melt off as we go forward. The Florida banks right now on their money market funds are paying about 25 to 50. There is one bank that's paying, well, no longer paying a little bit higher, roughly your 25 to 50 basis points. That's not really, in my mind, an option for additional dollars because I don't want to throw too much more money into your banks. There's a fair concentration there right now. The overnight pools, the best overnight pool is Florida Prime. That's managed by Federated. It's AAA rated. Some of the other pools are significantly lower. Their legacy assets are melting off as well. One thing I want to put on here is Florida Star is a purely government pool, and that's paying 8 basis points. So to me, that's a little bit of a benchmark. You know that if you went into a pool that was managed by professionals and it was all governments, it would pay 8. So that just sort of gives you an idea of where you are at this point in time. So fortunately, there are no maturities coming up between now and the end of November. So you're locked in to the yields that you have. There are no required purchases because right now you're spending the dollars that you have. You're going to spend in September, you're going to spend in October, you're going to spend in November. You have plenty of liquidity, you have plenty of dollars to tap into to make those purchases. So there's no investment purchases that are required right now. I don't want to jump in early and buy a one-year treasury at 12 or a two-year treasury at 14. The overriding objective right now is safety. As I mentioned before, we're not going to be chasing yields. The yields have been pretty much where they are since March. They've jumped around a little bit. We haven't missed opportunities by not jumping into additional treasuries. What we've done is we've ridden your pool yields down. So, from 1% to 70 to 60 to 50 to 40, and last month we averaged about 39, and now we're closer to the lower 30s. So a couple things I want to point out here. I know this is difficult for most people to see, but I want to point out a couple things that look a little inconsistent just in case you have questions. The first one is that you're limited to 20% CDs, bank CDs. We were under that. Now we're just slightly over that. And the reason why is that the dollars are being spent, the CDs are consistent. So that percentage is going to increase as you spend some of your dollars. And now we're at 21%. We're a little over. Didn't mean we bought more CDs. It just basically means that your overall dollars have fallen. The other thing I want to point out is if you look at the two bottom boxes where you go from August to September, and you look at the yields and you look at the allocations from red to blue, and you recognize we're not actually doing anything, so you're wondering why the numbers changed. I just want to mention to you that when securities move toward maturity, they move out of one maturity bucket and into another, and with that, they carry their yields. So just kind of keep in mind when you look at those inconsistencies in that box. Finally, and I don't want to get, okay, so this is your benchmark comparison. As I mentioned before, you're the red line. You actually have caught up with and surpassed the one-year weighted average treasury. Since the weighted average treasury is going to discard year-ago rates and add today's rates, that's going to continue to fall, and your yield is going to continue to rise relative to your benchmarks. And that should happen pretty significantly for September, October, November, and probably December. So I think your benchmarking is looking fine. What I did want to mention here very briefly is a couple things. We are looking at a number of different factors on the banks. First and foremost, the banks that you have deposited are all qualified public depositories in Florida. We check that regularly to make sure that they're still there. We also check the percentage that they're required to put in. So almost all of your banks are required to put in only 25% collateral. It goes up to 110. Two of your banks are required to put in 50% collateral into the collateral pool. We see those as good signs that the requirement is that they only put in a relatively small amount. We also look at their capital, and I will look at their overall capital ratio, which is required by Basel to be 8%, and all of your banks are adequately capitalized. So, you know, the state is standing there with the collateral pool. You have adequate capital in the banks. We also looked at the Bauer rating for these. The rating is basically from 0 to 5. Almost all of the banks are 5-star rated, and one is a 4-star rated. 4-star is still considered excellent in Bauer's rating. So I think everything is fine. We also look at deposits and the relative, your deposit relative to the overall deposits. One of the small local banks is higher than the others. We knew that going in, but it's roughly 6%. There is, those CDs will gradually mature, but I don't feel like there's any issue with the banks. We'll continue to watch it. Your CD rate, again, or your CD level is topped out. The amount that you have in the banks, in my opinion, is where it needs to be. The one thing that I want to, really the reason I'm here today as much as anything else, is to tell you that when we get to the point where your deposits start to come in and we need to do something with your deposits, we're pretty close to topped out for investment pools, and I don't want to add anything there. We're topped out for CDs, so we won't be able to add anything there. We're going to need to buy treasuries is what we're going to need to do. And those treasury rates are going to be low. That's what the market is. But we still need to diversify, and we need to make sure that we're not buying things that we wouldn't normally buy. So I want to prepare you for December when you know, I'm going to ask you in all likelihood to buy, you know, 9-month and 12-month and 15-month treasuries at 12 and 14 and 13 basis points.
Got it.
So we're not asking for recommendation today because we're not asking you're basically in a spend mode, but I want to inform you and ask if there's any questions that I can answer at this point.
So Scott, I do have a question, back to the point you made a couple moments ago about moving into treasuries as we get into December and so forth. Yeah, it's important to me as our advisor moving towards that in this unique financial field that we're playing in, is that if you feel that it would be in the best interest of our investment portfolio to modify or adjust our policy on investment, I would hope and very much desire that you would come to us in advance and say, look, you may do better if the board changes policy here or changes policy there. So I just want to make sure that's on your radar, knowing where we may be with treasuries, you know, in that fourth quarter. So I would want you to start thinking about that and what that may look like for our portfolio.
Okay, fair enough. I will tell you, your policy looks like most people's policy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't, for instance, suggest that you add commercial paper right now because that's a real trap.
Yeah,
Those spreads are really
we know that one.
squeezed. There's European commercial paper right now that's trading at 15, 16 basis points for 9-month paper, and that's silly to me. Unsecured.
Right.
Bad name.
Absolutely. Great. Any other inquiries? Seeing none, do we have anybody here from the public? Thank you, Mr. McIntyre. Anybody from the public that desires to speak on this investment portfolio discussion? Seeing none, okay, I'll go to board action.
Mr. Chairman, there isn't a recommendation, so do you want us to just accept the report since there's no recommendation?
Well, I think the recommendation is going to be we do nothing. Is that pretty much it, Mr. McIntyre?
I mean, I'd be happy to move
Make
to
a
adopt
motion
the
that we don't do anything?
recommendations of our financial advisor based on the report submitted today, which is to do nothing.
Second.
We got a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, like sign? All right, real quickly, do we have anything from the county attorney for this morning?
No report this morning.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Okay. All right, well, the next thing we have up, we have a couple folks here from the public that have requested to speak in advance of public comment that's usually taken at the end of the meeting in the afternoon. So I will call first person, Bill Shilson. Mr. Shilson, if you would approach, please, and give us your name and address for the record, and tell us exactly what non-agenda item you wish to discuss with us today, sir.
Thank you for seeing me. My name is Bill Shilson from Longwood. I'll speak as fast as I can. This
Your
is not-
physical address, sir?
224 Slade Drive.
Thank you very much.
This is not a unidimensional problem. This is obviously about the COVID. We're very likely at the end of the mother of all business cycles, and we are also at a point where this community can choose to enter it either strong or weak. My concern today is that of the financial health of the community, and that we appear to be sacrificing that health and strength for optics. I see people walking down the street alone in the open air, dutifully donning their bridles. I see them in their cars, alone and masked, and sometimes with blast shields. Many times they can't see me because the rags on their faces impede their own vision. I shake my head and give them a wide berth. We can continue to throttle our productivity and enter this next economic phase severely weakened, or we can choose to do everything possible to fortify it, and the upcoming challenges bold and strong. Let us set aside the emotional theater preferred by the media and coldly calculate what an increasing unemployment rate will do to our splendid little corner of the earth. Higher unemployment will mean more pressure on the food banks. It will mean a compromised unemployment fund. It will mean less taxes, from which will mean less possible expenditures, won't it? It will mean foreclosures and evictions and inevitable homelessness. Let me ask you, how many homeless families is one less hospitalization worth? Do you know what it means to be homeless? I do, and it sucks. I can't even imagine the horror of it with children in tow. If homeless families don't do anything for you, then maybe the increased crime rate will. Newsflash, even the most moral among us will resort to the unthinkable when it means the difference your own child is going to go hungry. Fact, the top 3 counties for unemployment in this state started draconian measures early, and those with the 9 lowest never mandated the masks at all. Widely available statistics and reports on the individual states of the Union clearly show the correlation of the freedom indexes to quality of life and unemployment rates. The socialist utopias have riots and things on fire and are stacking up dead cops like cordwood. The free states pay taxes and go to the park. It's as simple as that. One side of the aisle is desperately clawing for individual sovereignty and accountability, and the other wants to charge mask deniers with attempted murder. Look it up. Clearly, we can't be most concerned with the reported numbers of people who have actually died from this latest viral gift from China, as that number is negligible when rationally examined. Even if you look at the full advertised number of the CDC, everyone who expired with a trace of the Rona in their blood is a third of the number of people that died last year because they were fat and eat poorly. Where's the love for those guys, myself being one of them? Are we really concerned with the number of people contracting what turns out to be a bad flu? One of my daughters has it right now, and she's been dutifully sequestered in isolation at college until she recovers from her sniffles. 80% of the people that contract this diabolical virus have to be tested to find out they actually have it. Otherwise, they'd never know. This leaves us the cases that actually end up in the hospital. Please forgive my utter lack of decorum, but what precisely are the hospitals for if not for caring for the ill? I believe the curve has been flattened long ago. Oh, I can hear the keyboards clattering away now in furious indignation, inferring fierce accusations of the latest denialism du jour and conspiracies and other dark things. ZFG, my friends. It may interest you to know that the province of the county from whence this little pearl of societal destruction was born, Wuhan, China, has declared 0 new cases since May. How is this even possible, one might rightfully ask?
Time,
Well,
Mr. Shilson, if you
yep,
could
I got
wrap it up.
30 seconds. Along with the famed terms of R0, CFR, and IFR, you better also know the intricacies of PCR testing metrics known as CT amplification or Zoom. I wish I had the inclination or time to explain it, but alas, I do not. In closing, I would urge this panel of experts to employ at least one designated dissenter to occupy a seat in the echo chamber. There are other considerations on the table. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Shilson. Okay, next request we have is Alexa McClenny. Good morning, Ms. McClenny. Hello. If you would, your name and address for the record, and you will have 3 minutes.
My name is Alexa McClenny. My address is 1058 Crystal Bull Circle, Castleberry, Florida. Good morning. Thank you for letting me speak with you today. I appreciate the opportunity. 2 weeks ago, Dr. Husty said that they thought all weekend about what benchmark should be used to demask. He said no one had a number, so they just threw out 50 positive cases per week, which seems almost impossible, now it's my words again, to achieve with a population of 470,000 people, especially considering a positive case may mean already recovered with antibodies. Why would we use just positivity rates and not critical hospital cases when everything was to slow the spread to allow time for the healthcare community to not become overwhelmed? It is apparent the medical community is doing a great job at treating current critical COVID cases. Back in July, the system was close to capacity, but now is at 1/6 of what it was in that time. If there was an unmanageable spike from Labor Day weekend and with school starting in August, we would be seeing it right now. Cases are up, but hospitalizations are still declining. When this order was put into effect, there were 2,735 positive cases and near 200 hospitalizations. Since then, positive cases have risen greatly to over 8,800, yet hospitalizations have drastically dropped to 26 as of yesterday. The vast majority of cases are recovering on their own, and the healthcare system is doing a fine job with the cases presented to them continually. No one said that we would not get COVID. The question should be, is the system able to handle the caseload? So please know, I truly support people wearing a mask if they feel they need to. My mother is one of those people that is in a, she has autoimmune disorders, that this would be something that she feels is really important to her. But I just am very against a continual mandate of the masks. So I wanted to also say we can look at the numbers now of other counties around us that do not have mask mandates. So for example, Brevard County has had a total of 270 deaths out of a population of 600,000. How can we be so sure that masks are doing anything more than not wearing a mask, especially when the CDC has retracted its statement that coronavirus was airborne, saying the post was shared by mistake? So Seminole County residents deserve clarity regarding the benchmarks recommended at the last meeting. 50 people that lost their sense of smell for a week is very different in metric from 50 on a ventilator. And I feel like mask mandating at this time, based on this data, looks more like overreach. So I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone else here that did not fill out a request to speak on this matter? I have a question on this matter, if staff could assist us. How many fines have been written on this executive order?
None, Chairman.
None?
None.
No fines? Has there been any action taken from a law enforcement standpoint to withhold, detain, arrest, penalize?
No, sir.
None of that has happened?
No.
Okay. Businesses have the right to require T-shirts, footwear, or anything else they may decide they feel is necessary to protect their employees?
That's correct, and so that's an important point, is that these national corporations will continue to have, no matter what we do, they will continue to have their requirements.
Sure. So,
And it is their right, yeah, it's their.
of course, absolutely. You know, I mean, I think we've all been in restaurants where folks like to show up with no shoes and no shirt.
No service.
No service. I was curious to where we stood with that. So as far as no financial penalties or
No, sir.
anything has occurred by any of our municipalities with that throughout the county,
No,
including
sir, in fact,
the sheriff's
governor,
office?
made the request, required, letter to all local jurisdictions, and we researched everything, and we already knew the answer, but none of our local police departments and the sheriff's office, that was never the intent. The intent was voluntary compliance. It's written in the order that way.
So, for the benefit of the public, let's talk about outside. Can you give us an overview? What is the requirement when you're outdoors?
Sure. If you are unable to social distance in large crowds, masks are needed. Otherwise, no. I mean, if you could social distance, masks are not needed outside at all. So that would be, for example, and I hate to use this because this may confuse things too, but, well, let me not use that then. So the schools also have a requirement. And we've received some, and I know you all have received correspondence as well, and this is very important, that no matter what decision you all make, if there is a decision to rescind, or if we rescind, if the executive policy or executive advisory group recommends that, if the hospitals, whatever, the school board still has their rules and policies. So I know you all know that, but that's important for the public to know that writing the Board of County Commissioners and or me or anyone else and asking to change school policy, it's they're elected a board, they make their own decisions. So, and we have talked to them and they said, really, we don't care what you do, this is what we're going to do. Of
course.
To protect our teachers and our students.
Sure.
In a nice way they said that.
So have we, Ms. Guillet, have we closed any businesses in the county under any of the executive orders since this took place?
We never required any business closures.
We've never closed or shuttered any businesses
None of
here
our-
at a local level?
None of our orders ever required any business closures.
That was done at either a state or a federal level?
That's correct.
Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's, okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Chairman?
Commissioner Carey?
Well, I mean, voluntary compliance, that's kind of oxymoron here because we have mandatory mask orders. So
Sure.
it isn't voluntary if you're making it mandatory.
Sure, so if there is a gross.
Folks, please.
If there is a gross violation, which there hasn't been, I think that's what's important. But if there is a gross violation at a business or anywhere, but
yeah.
our community, and we've said this multiple times on press conferences, our community has been very responsive. They are very caring people in this county, and they care for others. None of us I hate wearing this thing. None of us at New Year's Eve said, wow, we'd really love to wear this all the time. None of us. But our people have heard, and we have not had any issues, to answer your question. We have not had any issues.
Right.
And I think it's important to also recognize and acknowledge that wearing a mask is more effective in protecting the people around you than protecting yourself. It's very akin to a prohibition on smoking and the effects of secondhand smoke on the people around you. So the mask is really intended to protect the people around the mask wearer more so than the mask wearer. So, and I think there's a misconception out there that we're forcing people to protect themselves when really we're trying to keep the community safe. So, and that's why it's so important and why we say we have our campaign, I wear my mask for you. It really is a matter of being courteous with respect to other people in the community.
No, I think, Commissioner Locker, I think people have been very courteous and
Absolutely.
have done well in our community, all things considered.
One of the things that I'd love for you to touch on, Alan, if you could, is the members of the advisory committee who represent the hospitals in our county. I had some folks reach out to me suggesting that perhaps we had gone out looking for people who had a particular mindset and put them together in a room so that the feedback that we would receive would be the feedback we wanted because we went out and found like-minded people to give feedback. And if you could share with us how that group was gathered and who those individuals are, and if there are other individuals in the community that have similar levels of expertise, that have a differing opinion, I would like to hear that opinion. But if you could share with us how we happened to hear from that group at our
Just
last
the
meeting?
4 chief medical officers of the 4 hospitals. So we don't hire the chief medical officers. We have no say in who the chief medical officers are of the 4 hospitals in Seminole County. It's, they're hired by Advent Health, Orlando Health, and Hospital Corporation of America. So those 4 sit on the executive advisory group. The county medical director, which we do hire, but that medical director has been hired for, I don't know how many years. I'm looking to the fire chief, and for over a decade,
20
I think.
years. He's been here 20 years.
Yeah, I think
20
it's-
years?
I
Yeah.
think
He's
it's,
been here since before I got here.
I think it's
so I've been
14,
here 16 years.
15, 16.
So we didn't hire him during this event. The Florida Department of Health Director, Donna Walsh, which has been with us for about 10 years, came from Orange County, came here, worked for us for years, went back to Orange County, realized the error of her way, and came back here about 3 or 4 years, and she's been the director ever since. The senior epidemiologist, which came from Pinellas County, Kevin Baker. So those individuals, we don't have any say on the hiring of those individuals, and all of those have been in place for a while.
So I guess, just to follow up, because I really want to make sure that we have a level of expertise and people with variety of responsibilities and degrees, medical and otherwise, that happen to be in this community. Do we know of any other people with similar levels of education and expertise and responsibility who have a differing opinion? Have any of those people come forward? Have we heard from them? If there's someone out there listening right now that would consider themselves to be in that level of expertise, and if they have a differing opinion, I personally would like to hear from them, if they're out there.
Okay.
I have not heard from a medical director, a medical doctor, a senior epidemiologist, an immunologist, which would be the leads in this particular pandemic, that have had a dissenting opinion. If they come, we would welcome them.
Okay, and you'd let me know?
Sure, I mean,
All
you
right.
just made a invite to the whole 475,000 for them to send you an email.
I
so.
did. Well, hey, if they're out there, I want to hear from them.
Well, I don't know about my fellow commissioners, but I've certainly heard from plenty of PhDs and doctors and on both sides of this equation. So, look, for me, at the end of the day, I think it's been said over and over, none of us like it. It's not something we're accustomed to as Americans. We're not built this way. We're not built to interact with people with masks on. We're not built to have this social distancing. But at the end of the day, the experts say this is what we should be doing, social distancing, washing our hands. A mask is part of that. I think it's a small price to pay, in my opinion, to be able to allow business to continue and our public to continue to interact. I was talking to my son last week that said, why were many of the Asians wearing masks long before this ever happened? Was there some virus going on then? And I said, well, not that I know of, but I think some of them have immune system deficiencies. So for some, the mask is not something new, but for the vast majority of us, it absolutely is. So, all right, that's all the questions that I had. Anything else from the commission? So be it. We'll stand adjourned till 1:30. Thank you all.